The presenting sponsor of Rates and Barrels is Topps.com and Topps Project 70. Topps is celebrating the 70th anniversary of its very first baseball card design with a new program that pushes boundaries while paying homage to their heritage. Project 70 has brought together creators of all kinds for this extraordinary set. Graphic designers, tattoo and graffiti artists, animators, illustrators, painters, and even a jeweler make up the artist roster, which includes names like Snoop Dogg, Action Bronson, Ben Baller, Jeff Staple, Tyson Beck, Alex Pardee, and more. Each artist will select their own MLB players and Topps designs from any year to craft a unique story. Ever wanted to see Randy Johnson on the cover of Duck Hunt blowing up a bird? Now you can. 3 new cards launch daily all year long on Topps.com and are only available for 70 hours before they're gone for good. While you're there, be on the lookout for special cards. Head to Topps.com to learn more about Project 70 and to check out which cards are live right now. Welcome to Rates and Barrels, presented by Topps. Be sure to check out Topps Project 70. Derek Van Riper here with Eno Saris. On this episode, we will discuss the second chance leagues that are taking place over the weekend. The NFBC has several contests available, an opportunity to make things right if you're not happy with how your 2021 season is going, or to make more things go right if you're thrilled with how things are going right now. You can look at it that way too. We're going to talk about some players that have been disappointments so far, when to possibly admit defeat on some of those players, and when to actually seek them out as possible rebound candidates. So hopefully those two things go hand in hand. Probably get a few other questions in there as well. Some pretty awesome stuff happening over the course of the week. Alek Manoah debuted, and Javi Baez had a play against the Pirates that might be the most fun play I've ever seen in a baseball game at any level. So we'll get to that in just a little while. How's it going for you on this Friday, you know?
I have the ass.
Sweet. It's good to have that on a Friday.
I made a weird ass decision to do a juice cleanse. It's like $25 for 5 or 4 juices and a shot at the end. And I'm not supposed to have any food until dinner. Sort of a half-day cleanse. And all I want is food.
Yeah.
But instead I get this lovely green juice. It's so great. I love
Well, you opted into a juice cleanse, so I can't say I feel that bad for you. I mean, this was elective. It's not like
you did it to yourself. You did.
Yeah. Self-inflicted juice cleanse for Eno this time around. But I want to start with the second chance leagues, because the concept was unveiled a couple years ago by the NFBC. I played in it that first year, and it was pretty difficult to feel good about rankings 2 months in, because the corrections you were making, especially on underperforming early rounders, they felt like they were too much. It seemed to me like we were only going to make mistakes on the early rounders if we didn't take them close to where they were previously going. And it felt like at the other end, you had guys that were popping in the first 2 months. Moving them up, relatively speaking, was easier for me. Not overpaying for them, but adjusting them upwards seemed like a thing I could do at a pretty reasonable, consistent level. Fortunately, we have more tools now than we have had in the past. We have some auction calculators with rest of season projections in them, and that at least gives a baseline for where things should start if you're going to take the plunge and play in one of these leagues.
Yeah. There is a difference between predicting what'll happen in the next season and predicting what'll happen within a season. There are stats that are useful within season that are less useful season to season. But we talk about those a lot. But stuff like barrel rate and reach rate, I think those things are more useful in season to kind of get a sense of where someone is. Something like average exit velocity, which doesn't have that much value. I think it has some value in season just to give you a sense of their health and so on. And I think health is the biggest thing about season to season and in season. Like, the one thing we know, or we should know right now, is who's healthy and who's not. And that should help clean up your draft board, really.
Yeah, I was taking a look back at the top 20 in ADP, just looking at the main event drafts from mid-March to the end of March. And you kind of run through that list, like Acuna, he's healthy. Who would be in the top 20 still for drafts this weekend? Acuna, absolutely healthy and good. DeGrom, yeah, definitely. He had a ADP of 2 back at that time in that format. maybe he'd slide a little because of the injury he was dealing with that knocked him out for a start last week. But, generally, he's not fallen past about 7 or 8 in a draft. Tatis, healthy, good. Soto was hurt, healthy now. I think he's still up there. Garrett Cole, still fine. Mookie Betts was the first player that I looked at and said, he's not on the IL, but
is he healthy?
Is he?
Yeah, is he healthy? There's the back issue.
Yeah, so I don't know how much would you drop Betts if you were drafting this weekend? My first thought was he'd probably fall at least to 10 or 15 because there's a handful of guys that were in the top 20 who've been healthy and have played well that would probably creep up past him. And I don't know how many pop-up guys we'd have joining the first round just yet, but I think Betts would slide a little in this.
I think not to pull too far ahead in the rundown, but I think I'd push Jose Ramirez ahead of him. I'd push Trey Turner ahead of him, Shane Bieber ahead of him. I haven't looked at Story's numbers recently. I don't have any shares for some reason.
I think I've only got him in one league, and I never, ever think about taking him out of the lineup, so I don't look at his stats that often, and I just looked at him earlier this morning. Trevor Story is not having a typical Trevor Story year, and he's sort of making it work because he's running a lot. He's got 8 steals already in 50 games, so if he keeps that going, he'll get to mid-20s, which would be in line with the 18 and 19 numbers, and he was on a really good pace in the shortened season too, so it's not a surprising development.
He's been a streaky hitter. He has bad times. The problem is that what if he has a bad streak in Colorado and then gets traded and has an okay streak somewhere else, but it's not aided the same way that it might be aided by Colorado. So I don't know. I think I'd rather have Betts over Story.
I would at this point, because if you're thinking about Story now, if he gets traded before July 31st, half of what's left is in Colorado, half's not. And I think the half that he's in Colorado, we rag on the Rockies all the time. That's a bad supporting cast. They're a bottom 5 offense, even when you split team stats for home numbers. That's remarkable.
Wow, that's bad.
Yeah, that's really bad. So the runs and RBIs that you normally get from all the players in that Rockies lineup just aren't there.
You finally got Garrett Hampson, and this is what he did to your lineup.
This is the price that we all have to pay for Garrett Hampson.
You finally got Tapia and Hampson to play, but it turns out they're not that great. You know what? I'm looking at this list, and it's easier to want to move pitchers ahead of Betts because they're healthy, they're doing well. A pitcher like Nola or Max Scherzer, it's like, do you move them ahead of Betts? But then you're talking about, are you going to have 5 or 6 pitchers ahead of Mookie Betts?
That seems weird to me, right? I mean, I think
what hitters have joined the top?
Yeah, who actually has moved up as a hitter so far this season? Well, that requires a trip to the old earned value page. And
yeah, where do you have that? What do you use for that?
I use the RotoWire tool for that one. And you can mess around with the percentage spent on batters, a couple different things there. But I just leave it at the default initially. Vlad Jr. is probably the biggest mover in the early round guys, right?
Vlad
He's been the
Jr.
most valuable hitter so far.
Vlad Jr. doesn't steal.
I think I would rather have Betts rest of season, but
I don't know, man. Vlad Jr., everything seems to be pointing to this as being mostly sustainable.
I know.
Although he is moving out of Dunedin, and he had some really nice numbers in Dunedin. So I think that's a fair debate.
Isn't that Dunedin?
Don't ask me for the right pronunciation. Dunedin, I guess. Sorry.
I
live on the internet, man. Devers.
He's been up that way before, so it's not totally shocking to see him there.
I'm looking at Yahoo, and Devers is top 10. Semien is top 10. Chris Bryant is top 10.
Bo Bichette's up there.
Adolis Garcia is top 10, but he's a classic case. I think he would be overdrafted in second chances leagues. I just think I think he's a good player and he's made some strides, but I think he's more likely to hit 230 going forward.
Right. I don't think as great as Adolis Garcia has been so far.
Sorry, again, another one.
You're good.
Adolis.
It's all good. I would not draft him for a 15-team league, probably within the first 7 rounds. I like him. I think he can be a good player and not be in the first 7 rounds of a 15-team draft. because there's batting average downside. There is a scenario where the playing time starts to fade later in the year. If he goes into a really deep slump and some other things are happening, he could lose his hold on everyday playing time. I think he probably will play every day the rest of the way, more likely than not. But he's probably not going to sustain the clip that he's been on to this point. That seems pretty much impossible.
One of the easiest rubrics that you could have for second chance leagues is just to look at strikeout rate and batting average, right? And just be like, does this person strike out 30% of the time or more, and is his batting average over 280? Easy regression candidate.
Yeah, so I think we could safely put Vlad Jr. well inside the top 20, maybe even inside the top 10, because he's been the most valuable hitter by some measures to this point. I think the case for Xander Bogaerts is one that I saw Todd Zola made in his weekly piece over at RotoWire. The average has been there. He's running a little bit. The run production's good because the Red Sox lineup has really bounced back to being one of the better lineups in the league. And we talked about Bogaerts, I think maybe late last summer when we were trying to forecast early rounders for this season. And his numbers really jumped out to me then, too, as just being even better than I recalled. And he's just sustained that. So I think he's got a case to be at least a late first rounder, but definitely a top 20 guy.
Shoulder didn't seem to be a problem. And speaking of shoulders, Chris Bryant is right next to him. But, generally, I'm a little suspicious of anybody hitting over 330.
Good rule.
I just don't. I doubt that there's going to be many people that end the season over 330. So when you see Castellanos and Winker and even somebody like JD Martinez hitting for that well, I kind of am like, how much of their value so far has been in that batting average? Those guys don't steal. There's one steal for the three of those guys, So how much has it been batting average? But of course, the power is still good, and the power is a little bit more scarce this year. So I'm not saying they're bad players. I'm just saying that I wouldn't take any of those guys over Mookie Betts. I think the only real batter that we've come up with, back end batter that I would consider over Mookie Betts is Guerrero. I think I would probably take him over Betts. But that still leaves Betts as like a borderline first rounder or beginning of second round, depending on how many pitchers you want to put up there.
Yeah. And I think the other thing we were looking at too, with the pitchers moving up, previously Lucas Giolito had a first round ADP. He would probably lose that over the weekend. I don't think that's going to happen. Scherzer probably does move up a little. Nola probably moves up a little. I think Brandon Woodruff and Tyler Glasnow, along with Corbin Burns too, those guys would all move up quite a bit. I don't know. Would any of those three crack the first round? I don't think it's impossible, but do you think they'd be kind of where
Nola or Scherzer
and those guys were going? Yeah, like would they take the spot of those guys and then those guys would move up? Is that how you see that likely going?
It just seems like, I think it seems like, taking a pitcher in the first round is an even better bet mid-season, right? Because they're healthy. I'd like to see some sort of research that looks into like how predictive in-season health is. You know what I mean? But it seems like, there's a fair amount of pitchers that we just lose in March. And then they just have a terrible season where they're trying to get back or they end up just losing the whole season. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then there's guys that, make it through the first 2 months healthy and just anecdotally and this is not with research, like seems like they just stay healthy the whole season. So I bet you that that there's something there where you kind of want to take Max Scherzer in the first round.
Yeah,
the
I would
rest
feel that
of season
pressure.
projections from the bat say DeGrom, Cole, Bieber, Scherzer are all $22 guys, and on the bat side, the last $22 guy is Jose Ramirez. So they say those 4 plus 6, 7, 8 batters. That's 12 guys.
What does Yelich have for a rest of season value?
The bat rest of season has Ohtani right behind Jose Ramirez just as a batter.
It's pretty fun.
Wow. That is exciting. Still has Story right there after Ramirez, and actually makes Castellanos a borderline first rounder.
Yeah, Castellanos,
loves Castellanos.
I traded for Castellanos a few weeks ago because of that aforementioned love. I saw the numbers like, whoa, people might not be valuing him quite that high. And if he does that, that's a really impactful move that might not cost as much to get.
I bet you it's a park factor thing. Cincinnati is just top of the charts for hitters.
Yeah, for sure. Yelich is probably the hitter in the back of the first round that could fall the furthest from this group. I don't know, man. He just doesn't look right, which is...
He's already getting dinged in the projections because he's moved behind Story, Castellanos, Salvador Perez. Well, it's a two-catcher setting I got right now, so ignore that. Bo Bichette, Bryce Harper, Whit Merrifield. Christian Yelich is behind Whit Merrifield right now in rest of season projections.
Whit's got 14 steals so far, too. And I think with Yelich, the wild thing is that he has run a little bit in the games he's played. He's 4 for 4 in 18 games. But his K rate's still up above 30%.
And the
power's way down, ground ball rate's way up. I don't know if we're getting a bounce back soon or a little later or not at all this year. Like, I have a really bad read on Yelich, and I watch him a lot.
He's tanked. Do you know what we were talking about? I'm doing really well in all of my leagues that are not on the NFBC platform.
You need a second chance.
We were talking about reasons why, and I'm realizing right now the reason why is I did a lot of leagues on NFBC that were Yelich Buehler at the back end of the first round.
Yeah, and that was a combo that if
I was excited about,
I wanted that too. I thought it made tons of sense. I thought Yelich, because he hits the ball so hard, has so many ways to make value, that was going to make perfect sense.
His max exit velo is still there. The barrel rate is okay, but it's not where it was before. I don't know. I still think there's a chance. He just needs to just get a healthy run in. He has 70 plate appearances on the year.
I bet he is going to fall into at least the third round of the 15-teamers, though.
And I would still, it's siren song, man. I would still go for it.
I'd be very tempted at that reduced price.
But the K rate is a problem. The K rate is a definite problem. I don't know what's going on with that. And it almost feels like someone found a hole.
Maybe. I'm trying to think back to the NLCS in 2019. Maybe something in that series was discovered. That's the end of the amazing MVP season from Yelich.
Let me see. Fastball rate has just tanked. Oh, and that's interesting. It's not four seamers. People stopped throwing him two seamers. He's a lefty. Maybe he's feasting on two seamers a little bit.
That just can't be everything, though.
No,
there's too many things he does well for that to be the whole solution to, this is how you get him out. He won't hurt you anymore if you don't throw him
no one ever tried that. Stop throwing them two seamers.
All right, so third round in a 15-teamer is where we start to think about it with Yelich. That's the downgrade on him. Giolito would fall probably a similar amount, maybe even a little less, just because he is healthy right now, and I think that one blow up on that early day start in Boston, that meltdown that could happen to anybody, right? Unusual,
like to see
sort of pattern to get ready for a game that early. I'm kind of giving him a pass on that. I wasn't in on him as a first rounder. I didn't think he was out of place as an early second rounder, though. So I'm not. There's no victory lap for me here. I just think he's probably a late second, early third rounder if we're drafting right now.
Let me take Boston out. Oh, look at that! Without Boston, the last 6 starts, 3.16 ERA, 9.7 strikeouts per 9, 3.4 walks per 9, 1.5 homers per 9, though.
It's still not. It's
not
good, but it's not great.
Vintage. Well, vintage. It's not like we knew exactly what he's doing, but I don't know. I didn't think he was a first rounder. And second round now, yeah, I guess so.
Like late second rounder, I think. Back of that tier would be okay.
It is weird that
early.
It is weird that there's the pop up. I just figured there'd be more pop up hitters that we would consider in the second round. The second round seems like just an obvious place to take a pitcher, but then the first round was a great place to take a pitcher. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at these names like Aaron Judge, I guess, Devers, yeah. Bo Bichette, okay, yeah. But then after that, am I going to take Tucker in the second round? Am I going to take Semien in the second round? Am I going to take Bellinger in the second round?
No, not with the health. I mean, Yelich versus Bellinger. Now that Bellinger's about to come back is probably pretty similar again. Those guys just can't get away from each other.
Even on the way down.
Yeah. They're always right next to each other.
It's all about that MVP commercial, except now it's like LVP.
I hope they're both good again. It's more fun when they're good. I think Bichette did have a case to be a first rounder because there's speed to go with that power. Mm-hmm. The average floor is really high. I was skeptical back in March just because it was such a small track record, but another 200 plate appearances of him being as good as he's been since arriving, that adds quite a bit of confidence for me. So I'm increasingly in on Bichette, like at the 1-2 turn.
And the big thing, I think, is that he's taking off. There was some question of just how much he would steal.
Yeah, because that team scoring more runs might not need to be as aggressive on the base pass. But Marcus Semien's been running too. He's got 8 steals so far this season. Mm-hmm. I think he'd be more of a third, fourth rounder, probably a fourth rounder for me. I don't think I'd want to take him any more than that. Yeah. I like him.
There's also just a tiny question of how much Dunedin is factoring into these offensive numbers, because now they're going to Buffalo,
right? Which is still more hitter friendly than Rogers Center, but not as much of a boost as Dunedin. Is that?
Yeah, like Bo Bichette is hitting 248 away from home, and he has a 20% K rate at home and a 30% K rate on the road. That's wild.
That's really strange.
This is just early season, single season splits. I'm not reading into it too hard, but it does tell a larger story of like Dunedin was a real nice place for them.
So for pitching risers, obviously the usual.
Alek Manoah, number 1.
Yeah, we'll get to his debut in just a minute. Brandon Woodruff is tied for third in earned value.
Yeah, baby.
Pitchers. Yeah. I know. It's
I'll
great.
Take a victory lap on that one.
Even ahead of Corbin Burns, a few more innings for Woodruff because of the time that Burns missed on the IL.
Oh, is he giving us enough innings? No way. No way.
How did he do it?
He's a friggin' horse. Look at him.
He is a rather large human. What about Julio Urias? I mentioned Glasnow before, too. I think it's easy to talk yourself into Glasnow. 2 breaking balls now.
Oh, man.
Home run rate settling in. Like Glasnow
said
doing
that
everything
I had him too low, and I did because one of my rankings came out before, like the start before, like right before he had a start where he showed us all the slider. And as soon as I saw that slider, I was like, nope, up.
So he could be an easy second rounder, I think, at this point.
Yeah. 3 pitches. Look at how he got to the 9th inning. Did he do a complete game? No, did he pitch in the 9th inning? He definitely did 8 against Kansas City. And like everyone was like, holy crap, the Rays let someone pitch into the 8th.
Yeah. They let him pitch deeper into starts than people were acknowledging back during draft season. I tried to point that out. When he's completely healthy, he gets used like a normal starter, or had been used like a normal starter in the past. We've got more proof of that now that we've seen some 2 months worth of opportunities for him this season. Urias, I think, gets a big bump. I think I prefer Glasnow because there's more strikeout ceiling for the rest of the season, but I think Urias would probably be in that 2-3 turn conversation.
I moved Urias into the top 15 in my last rankings.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think he's in the conversation with like Nola.
Flaherty, maybe?
I have him right after Flaherty. I think maybe before Flaherty. I should maybe have him before Flaherty.
Yeah, and you mentioned before.
Well, the Flaherty is a really interesting case and I got some pushback in a chat recently, and I think it's really elusive. No, it really elucidates. That's a word, right? Anyway,
maybe
it brings forth some issues that are interesting. So his stuff number is basically average. His command number is above average, but with an average stuff number and a K- BB that's is good, but it's not like top 25 good. People were like, "Why do you have him, 14th? He's a total outlier in your group there." And I wanted to point out that Stuff Plus like is park independent, right? And it's good to tease out the park effects, but he's still going to be in that park. You know what I mean? He's still going to pitch half his games in that park, and he's still going to pitch in front of that defense that he's got. So I think that, he still deserves that even after this little blow up that he had recently. But I was like with Urias and Peralta right after Flaherty, I was like, there was like that moment where it's like, how hard am I going to push Urias and Peralta really? Like, am I going to put them in my top 10? You know what I mean? Like, seems ridiculous. So that Flaherty was like the kind of like a bit of a wall where it was like, okay, this is how far I can push a guy down that I liked in the preseason and who's pitching well, but the peripherals are a little bit iffy.
The last little cluster of pitchers that I would find tough to value in these second chance leagues, though, would be the guys like John Means and Carlos Rodon. I mean,
the big jumpers, a little bit like Peralta, but they just didn't have the peripherals to push them that hard.
Right. And I know a no-hitter goes a long way towards helping the ratios really pop over 8 to 10 starts, but they're more than that. I mean, with Rodon, the stuff looks like early career Rodon, right? The 3-pitch mix, the velo, the sliders back, all that stuff is good. With Means, you've been on him for a long time. I mean, he could end up in a better situation. He could end up not having to pitch in the AL East anymore, not having to pitch half his games at Camden Yards. That's possible, but I wouldn't expect that. I wouldn't draft him as a 4th rounder or 5th rounder in a second chance league expecting those things to change.
Someone who listens traded Means for Nola.
Whoa, that happened?
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's other people in the package, but I was like, I don't even care. You don't have to tell me who else was in the package unless it was like Mookie Betts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I just find like those pop up pitchers, the guys that we thought were okay early in the season, or guys that maybe we previously liked as outside the top 50 guys that could get a little better. Those guys, when they pop up into the top 10, top 20 in earned value, I don't really want anything to do with them in this format because I think the price is simply going to become too high.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I have I have Rodon around 30. Means at 50. I just think that park, man, like if we're talking about park factors, his stuff number is only okay. He has a great command, but he also is headed towards August in Baltimore, man.
Yeah, not a place you really want to have pitchers throwing, especially given the state of that division. You've got 4 pretty nasty offenses that he has to deal with in division right now too. So not many soft landing spots. Tread very carefully. But if you do play in one of these second chance leagues this weekend, let us know how it goes because I think it's a really fun format. I think we take the best part of fantasy baseball season and we bring it back in, this last week of May. We can bring it back again around the 4th of July and play a second half league. I think this is actually a kind of a future forward sort of fantasy idea that I'd like to see even more of. And it maybe missed the Chandler Park contest from a few years ago. I don't know if you played in that, but that was a salary cap monthly contest where Ron would change the prices every month and you could do weekly lineup changes, and it was awesome. I hope a format like that comes back at some point in the not-so-distant future because that was a lot of fun as well. This episode of Rates and Barrels is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is something preventing you from achieving your goals? BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. Connect in a safe and private online environment, and you can start communicating in under 48 hours. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp has licensed professional counselors who are specialized in depression, stress, anxiety, relationships, and several other areas of focus. Anything you share is confidential, and BetterHelp is convenient, professional, and affordable. I want you to start living a happier life today. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting our sponsor at betterhelp.com/rates. Join over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/rates. We all know that we should drink more water by the time you feel thirsty. It's too late. You're already dehydrated. You can't focus. You feel tired. You get the ass, and you don't want that. That's where Hydrant comes in. Hydrant is a refreshing drink mix powder made with 4 key electrolytes: sodium, potassium, magnesium, and zinc. It's made with real fruit juice powder and no artificial sweeteners or synthetic colors. No nonsense, all science. Hydrant Sleep is a new bedtime mix carefully formulated to promote restful sleep and hydration. Hydrant Sleep includes melatonin, magnesium, L-theanine, GABA, and chamomile to promote restful, high-quality sleep. Plus, it's backed by a 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you don't love it, send it back for a full refund. We've got a special deal for our listeners to save 20% off your first order, or subscribe and save 30% on your first subscription order. Go to drinkhydrant.com/rates or enter our promo code RATES at checkout. That's drinkhydrant.com/rates and enter our promo code RATES for 20% off your first order. drinkhydrant.com/rates, enter the promo code RATES to save 20%. We thank Hydrant for sponsoring the podcast. Hydrant, where water meets wellness. All right, part of the exercise of adjusting expectations, whether you're doing second chance drafts, trying to make trades, trying to make drop decisions, is figuring out when to admit defeat and when to actually seek out a rebound target. So we had a question that came in. It came in from Eric, and here's the email. Who would you say are the biggest non-injury busts or disappointments so far, and what's your outlook on them moving forward? Related to that is, to me, one of the more challenging parts of the game is deciding when to move on from a player I was high on in March. I've made the mistake of dropping these types of players too early when they've been struggling, only to see them play like all-stars for someone else. I've also made the mistake of stubbornly holding players while I watch waiver wire gems go to other teams. An example, passing on Adolis Garcia because of my belief in Nick Senzel. Is there a particular point in the season when you determine, I was wrong, he stinks? Or are there obvious stats for hitters that you look at to determine that he's not worth holding on to? Or is it more of a subjective, I've seen enough type thing? Thanks, and oh yeah, tell Eno to try the Trooper beer.
Okay. Don't have to tell me twice. No, it's in the name. It's in the name. Rates and barrels. I look at barrel rate. I look at reach rate. Those are one of my top 2 stats for in season for hitters. If you look at Senzel, you'll see that he just doesn't hit the ball hard. And if you pair, I think I'll throw in strikeout rate, because that's something that we were talking about with Yelich. And so if Senzel is not going to make a ton of contact, he's not going to make great contact, what are we doing here? And he has to steal a lot of bases to make that whole thing work. He turns into like a little bit more of Leotis Taveras, or like a Oscar Mercado, like a borderline play that you're rostering just for steals. So then you can sort of, if you change your appraisal of him, you can treat him that way. But there's another guy that comes up that I think of, Tommy Pham. Tommy Pham is elite in reach rate, and his barrel rate is fine, and he's still stealing bases. And the one thing that he's just not doing is he's not performing on balls he hits off the sweet spot. He's not performing on barrels and not performing on those things. So I would say that's going to turn around. I think it's already started to turn around. And so Pham was one of my biggest buy lows, and I got him off the waiver wire in NFBC on one of my leagues. So I think Pham is somebody that I would bet in. Senzel is somebody I wouldn't bet on going forward.
Yeah, I think the Senzel versus Adolis question kind of wrapped in there. I'm not sure you were being too stubborn at the time that you had to make that move, because we were talking about being 2-3 weeks into the season. I don't know if that was enough to look at Senzel and say it's not happening just yet. I think that's a really, really difficult decision to make. I think if you make that sort of call, if you're in a 10-team league and Garcia wasn't picked up until the middle of May, you had that extra 3 weeks to get a look at him, extra 3 weeks to get a look at the players you're thinking about dropping. Maybe after that amount of time, a month and a half, then maybe you'd have been too stubborn. In a lot of leagues, you don't have that luxury because it's deep enough where a player like that's going to get scooped up a lot sooner.
Yeah, there's always the interaction between your leagues and particular settings, right? Because Eugenio Suarez, I believe in him to hit homers, but I also believe that he'll strike out a lot. So there were some questions from people like, I'm in a league that penalizes Ks from batters, and I'm like, how much value are you going to get from like a 190 batting average and 35 homers?
Yeah, I
And that's
remember that
where,
question. Errors too. That league also punished errors.
oh, that's right. Yeah, that was a tough league, man. I hope he drops Suarez because that's just going to be a tough year for him.
Yeah, and that's saying, holy cow, it's the worst possible league for Suarez right now.
It's also like, it's irrelevant maybe with top 50 batters. Like I'm looking at Gleyber Torres. Are you just going to drop Gleyber Torres? No, I don't think so. Unless it's like a 10-team league. But even then, I think Torres is going to be okay. He may not be as good as we thought. That's something with Lindor is like, I'm going to adjust down my opinion of his power ceiling and think of him more as like a 20 to 25 homer hitter maybe now. But like, you're not dropping him.
No.
If he could still hit 260 with 25 homers and 10 steals, like he's still going to have value. It's just not going to be a good first round value, So I think you really have to kind of go down further. You have to go down to like Lourdes Gurriel, right? Like sort of 110, 120 places where you could just drop somebody if they're not good. Alec Baum.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Moving on from players like that is possible in shallow leagues. Senzel was late enough in drafts where players in that range, that would also include his teammate who went off, Jesse Winker. Like once you get outside the top 150, I find like it's pretty easy to cut a player who's underperforming compared to players that go before that marker. I don't know why that's the line, but it's the first 10 rounds of a 15-team league. Something about the first 10 rounds makes me want to hold the player. And
here's some guys.
Expectations.
Andres Jimenez,
yeah,
156 drop.
Easy cut.
Miguel Sano, if you really need the batting average, I think you're still right. I mean, even though he's gone off, I think, that batting average is just going to suck all the time.
Well, yeah, and I think with Sano, I guess the point I was trying to make a couple of weeks ago when I talked about him on the Athletic Baseball Show was more that the Twins know what he is at this point. He's not going to become a superstar. Like you look at him as a low average, so-so OBP masher with negative defensive value. That's just what he is.
Could be headed towards the Eddie Rosario treatment, where at some point they decide he's too expensive and they just release him.
Right, and that doesn't mean he won't land somewhere else and just keep doing what he's been doing. I hope that wasn't implied previously, but I think that could lead him out of Minnesota, and then who knows? We'll see if he ends up in a more hitter-friendly environment or a less hitter-friendly environment. I guess that could shift things a bit for him too. But you mentioned Gleyber. Gleyber is interesting because the numbers he's putting up right now, the slash line's so similar to what happened in the shortened season when the power disappeared. He's got a 344 slugging percentage right now. What the heck happened? I mean, even before the rabbit ball massive year against the Orioles in 2019, he hit 38 home runs that year in total, but like 15 of them came against Baltimore. He hit 24 homers as a 21-year-old back in 2018 and slugged 480. So there's still something that just seems off with Gleyber.
He never really had a standout barrel rate. No. But it's also regressed off of that. He had 2 years of 9% barrel rate, and now he's at 5%. So there has been some regression. I really like his combination of plate discipline and contact ability, though. So maybe he's like Zips with a 214 rest of season ISO. That seems pie in the sky-ish. The bat X, is more like 180, 190. Even that seems a little bit far off. But if he can do even the 180 ISO, that would be a 267 average going forward, 17 homers, 6 stolen bases. Like, I think he might be a buy low. Like, Baltimore is coming. He's going to go to Baltimore in August. He might have like a 3-homer series.
Probably against John. He's going to have a 3-homer game against John Means. He's going to homer off him in the first, the third, and the fifth.
And it'll all come together.
Yeah, the whole thing just fits perfectly back together. Don't you love it when you can just drop something on the floor and it shatters into 1,000 pieces and then you can just glue it perfectly back together like that?
with one series in August.
That's all it takes. Just one great series in August. I mean, he's been a league average hitter for the better part of, not quite it's not a year, but it's almost a season's worth. That's less than that. It's 83 games. I do see him as a buy low though, because
successful on 3 out of 5 stolen base attempts. That's a little bit iffy.
But look at this team. How on earth are they not going to play him every day?
Yeah.
And even though the lineup isn't quite as good as we expected because of injuries, it's still a good lineup. The park's still a great place to hit. He doesn't have to be a barrel machine to be at least a 20-homer guy. So you project that over 2/3 of a season. That's about 14 to 15 homers with above-average counting stats and a batting average that won't hurt you. That's still actually really good floor.
I push back on that. I think the batting average will help.
It should definitely help, but
I think he should have a good batting average.
I mean 243 is the lower bound. Like last year, that he can't go lower than that with these plate skills. Like that just it's impossible.
With that strikeout rate and that walk, I just don't. I don't see it. So I think he's a mild buy low. He's definitely not somebody I'm turfing.
No.
And I think he's just too far ahead of that list, too far ahead of that ranking. I think you're right about top 150. It's a lot easier to drop. I don't know, Gary Sanchez.
Yeah, especially in a one-catcher league. Two-catcher league might be a little harder, but a one-catcher league, sure, you can make that move.
I think I do. My eyes circle a little bit around Mountcastle and Lux.
Mountcastle's been brutal.
But he's also had some good streaks, and I wonder how much is just we need some. Like I said, home starts for him in warm weather.
Well, and I think with Mountcastle, he has nothing left to prove in the minors. So by sending him back down, you're probably not helping his long-term development at this point. You need to figure it out.
It'd be some sort of admission of not really believing in him.
Right, which they shouldn't do that.
263 in May with 3 homers.
Yeah, it's a step back in the right direction.
I don't think he's an amazing player. I don't necessarily think he's someone you should target in dynasties as a buy low. I think he's just another one of these players that's okay for a while.
Young oatmeal.
Kind of. Because he's not going to steal bases. He seems to be headed for a corner outfield first base situation. I mean, he has stolen 3 bases, but I don't think he's like a guy who steals bases much.
I like Lux here in this conversation because he's exactly the type of player that I will be really stubborn about. So this is my Nick Senzel.
And for some reason, I'm just out.
What do you not like in the profile? What concerns you the most?
Terrible barrel rates and below average max EV. I think he's Mountcastleian. He just has better strikeout rate.
So
and a better position.
Here's the kill shot supporting argument for you from me. 2019, which I looked at and said, Gavin Lux just did something at AAA that we don't see hitters do. He was 88% better than league average for 40 games.
Rabbit ball in the PCL.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, 88%, but it's context adjusted. 88% better with the ball everybody got to hit with. But I think what that did, I think that set some unfair power expectations. I think that set some 30-plus home run expectations for the short term.
If you don't look at that, he looks more like a 150 ISO guy.
Yeah, and if you gave him, he's been young for the level wherever he's played, and we're only 301 plate appearances into the Gavin Lux experience at the big league level. So whereas with Mountcastle, you see him as that young oatmeal, and I fully agree with that. Because Lux plays up the middle, and because he's been young for the level everywhere he's played, I think he will be afforded many more opportunities to play and figure it out. And I don't think he's necessarily going to be a late bloomer. I think we're just seeing little flashes here and there of him starting to put it together with Corey Seager down. I don't know how comfortable he is at second base, so maybe he ends up in a corner outfield spot or something. But I think he can hit enough eventually to be there. I would look at Lux as a long-term buy. If you're not playing for this year in a keeper or dynasty league, the window is open to actually go get him. You can actually make a move for him.
I just had a really weird feeling too. Well, I'm looking at his numbers and I'm like, how different is he from Gleyber Torres? Gleyber, sorry if that's how you say it. Torres strikes out less and walks more and has a history of better barrel rates and a better max exit velo and some nice parks he gets to play in. So I do think all those things matter. I would buy Torres in a dynasty league before I bought Lux, but the price might be higher on Torres too.
The price should be higher on Torres. He's got 1,000 more plate appearances in the big leagues already.
Mm-hmm.
And they're only about a year apart in age. Torres
there's actually still a question if Lux is even like an average major leaguer.
Yeah, I mean that's at least debatable. With Torres, bad
He's
Torres is an average hitter.
Yeah.
And good Torres is a well above average hitter. So I do like both players. I think Lux in a shallow mixed league is a very tough player to make a decision on. If you had him in a 12-team league right now, would you consider
just now showing signs of life with the 2 Grand Slams?
Mm-hmm. I think he's probably good.
It's a little bit harder for you too because I just don't have any shares. Like I just didn't buy in. I didn't do it.
It is easier to tell people to cut a player that you don't have to cut.
Right? Yeah, just get rid of them. I don't have any to begin with, but you have something invested in him.
Why don't you go punch that guy in the face?
I didn't do it, but you should.
I have no stakes here. Like I'm not the one who's going to get punched back and beat up.
That's so weird. What? I'm not telling anybody to punch everybody in the face.
That's not what we're encouraging, but it's the same kind of thing. It's like, why don't you go punch that guy? Like, no, thank you. I don't want to fight people.
Here's just a random one because this one I do have stakes in, and I kind of just want your opinion. Lorenzo Cain.
All right, so now we're talking about olds.
35 years old.
I can call him that because I'm older than Lorenzo Cain. So don't worry.
He stole 4 bases though, man, and like the strikeout rate's not terrible. You're not buying him for a ton of homers. I think you just got to hold on to him.
So affordable in leagues with trading, like would cost almost nothing to get. Steals are so clustered.
You need steals. I say you buy him. XBA is only 233, which is not amazing, but I think if he hits 233, he's projected for basically 260 and 270 or better. But even if he just hits 233 going forward, he'll have positive value. It won't be amazing, but he could also give you 10 steals, and that might move you in a category.
And let's say he's basically the guy we saw in 2019. He was below average in terms of WRC plus that year. He hit 260 with a 325 OBP, 11 homers, 18 steals. Yeah, so the average doesn't hurt you. The speed helps, and the power's
just keeps you afloat. He's not like a zero guy, you know?
Yeah. Well, so here's the other problem, though, with Lorenzo Cain. Part of what made him appealing a few years ago was the way the Brewers were putting runs on the board. If we're concerned about Yelich, and we're concerned about Hira, and we don't see them getting upgrades before July, I mean, they got Adames, but I'm saying like a big impact corner bat. If we don't see that happening, you have to lower the ceiling for those counting stats. And the floor, too. The floor is not quite as good. He gets to hit higher in the order, but the quality of the production you're getting from him hitting high in that order is not what we would expect.
And if Bradley ever gets it going, you know, or it could get a little crowded in that outfield, and they're built to kind of rest guys. And so then you're talking about in a weekly league, you'll have some weeks where you're like, do I want to play Lorenzo Cain this week? Because how many times is he going to play?
Yeah, because Avi's going to play a lot. Yelich is going to play as much as his back lets him play.
Cain is old.
Bradley and Cain kind of share center field.
Right now, Bradley is just so terrible offensively that like Cain's playing more often.
I was wondering about this. Bradley has been, at least in my mind, one of the more streaky players in the league.
Right. Could he get hot and push Cain out to the bench more often?
Yep. And have we seen stretches as ugly as the one that he's gone through in the first 2 months before? Yes. Has he done this before? Boston fans 100%. Are like, yeah, of course he's done this before.
Oh, man. But, you know, projection-wise, Bradley's only like a 90 WRC plus.
He's fun to watch in the field. He's so good defensively.
Do they take Cain out of the game with a lead?
Trying to think if I've seen them do that yet. I think
for Bradley defensively,
I think they would. Well, before Yelich was healthy, they would take out whoever was playing left, whether that was.
And I think even now they might take out Yelich before they take out Cain, just because they're defense. Still kind of nursing him backwise, right?
Yeah, depending on where they're at in the batting order. You know, if you're talking about you're going to the 9th and Yelich just hit, so you know you're just trying to shut it down.
Yeah,
in that situation.
But then that doesn't cost Yelich an AAB, which
right. That to me is a no-brainer to possibly take Yelich out and just max out the quality of the defense, because it makes a difference. Like, it's Yelich is okay defensively, but having Bradley and Kane out there together is just a cheat code.
Yeah.
So I would say Kane is okay, but it's got to be more of like a 15-team league. I don't think you can go much more shallow than that and expect the speed to be there because of the factors we're talking about. Playing time could dry up slightly. Lineup's not quite as good as we had hoped.
But here's a guy, I'm just not even going to look any advanced stats, and I'm just kind of going to do that blink, like sort of close my eyes and just opine, like I guess a lot of people do. Why am I throwing random people under the bus? At least I didn't name anybody. Kyle Seager. I'm not going to look at anything. If you're not getting what you want out of Kyle Seager, I think you can move on. He's just a guy. He hits homers. He has a low batting average. If you need better than that, you can move on. And
his K rate kind of popped back to pre-shortened season levels too. So like last year when he's putting a lot of balls in play, that seemed a little more interesting. I know he pulls the ball a lot, hits a lot of fly balls.
Now you're going to make me call up his page. All right.
I'm looking at it right now. I liked him last year.
He's 33 too, so it's not like it's going to health and wealth and youth is going to make him better going forward.
No, he's the kind of guy though that could end up playing third base in a more hitter-friendly environment, such as Milwaukee. So I mean, it's a possibility there. But I am surprised. The projections point to pretty consistently like a 230, 3 teens-ish OVP. The Bat X likes him, relatively speaking, a 461 slug.
Power. Yeah.
So not a bad player, but I would agree that in most mixed leagues, you could probably cut Kyle Seager if you're not happy there. The olds are always easier to cut, though. It's the Senzels and the Luxes and the guys that we saw on prospect lists not that long ago and playing as some of the best players in the leagues they were in prior to getting promoted. Those guys are so hard to make.
I think we're far enough into the season, and with Lux far enough into his career, that you can actually point to his max exit velo. I know that you're not supposed to use an absence of a great max exit velo as against someone, and especially like it's a little bit rough on Lux because he's had 3 partial seasons. But you add up the 3 partial seasons now, and you've given him a fair amount of plate appearances, and he's never hit a ball over 110. I just think that's meaningful.
I am not as down on him as you are, but I understand the need in redraft leagues, shallow redraft leagues especially, to possibly move on if a better option is out there. So hopefully that answers your question in some way, Eric. It was at least fun to dig into a few of those players for us, so we appreciate the question nonetheless. Growing your business takes more than offering a popular product or service. It's essential to have the right people in place to ensure your company operates smoothly and has the potential to expand. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the best candidates for free. So if we at Rates and Barrels were going to add to our crew, we would want to do that with LinkedIn Jobs. Get started by posting your job for free to reach LinkedIn's network of 740 million professionals. Yeah, a network that big, we could actually find people who dig our sense of humor. Like there's at least one more person out there who could get along with us if we use a network that big. Fill out targeted screening questions to get your role in front of the most qualified candidates with the experience, skills, and motivation you need. Then use simple tools to filter and prioritize the top candidates that you'd like to interview. LinkedIn Jobs will help you hire the right person for your role, and your first job post is free. Just visit linkedin.com/rates. Again, that's linkedin.com/rates to post your first job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The Manscaped engineering team has confirmed that they have successfully created the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, which is now available for purchase in the US and Canada. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code RATES at manscaped.com. What makes this trimmer different than all other trimmers? A new multi-function on-off switch can engage a travel lock, created for people who like to travel. The optimized Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer is also waterproof, so you can groom in the shower and make cleanup easy. And did I mention wireless charging? The Lawnmower 4.0's new wireless charging system uses electromagnetic induction, which can help battery length last longer. Also, wireless means fewer cords in the bathroom. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code RATES at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code RATES. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. All right, Eno, we are moving on to some of the most fun things that have happened over the course of the last week. Let's begin with Alek Manoah. Yeah, you're on mute.
Your rundown or anything because you're in charge, but shouldn't we have led with the most fun stuff?
Second chance leagues are fun. I don't know.
All right.
And you know what? Everybody else, every show on MLB Network, everything.
Lead with Alek Manoah.
Well, the Javi Baez play trumped it in some cases too, which if it were me, if I were programming those shows, I would have put Manoah first. Programming this show, I said, second chance leagues are actually a thing that people could enjoy on this long weekend. Let's get that out there because people might not know those exist. Alek Manoah was really good. And I mentioned earlier, it's not the Yankees lineup that we expected going into the season, but this is why Stuff Plus and Location Plus and the numbers that you get on pitch quality also mean so much, because it might not have mattered if that was the fully operational Death Star Yankees lineup. He probably would have carved up the A Yankees lineup because he looked great against the B or C version.
Yeah, I posted his first strikeout, which was on a changeup to Odor, and somebody said, "Well, it's not that hard to strike out Odor." And I was like, "Well, did you see the second at bat?" The second strikeout, he made Judge look silly. I think Judge was expecting some sort of breaking ball back foot, and he got 96 up and in, and swung under that, and then he swung over a breaking ball. So, like, the greatest thing about it was just how every pitch looked good, right? If you're looking at Stuff Plus, for example, I was trying to be like, okay, I know the inner workings of Stuff Plus. Can I watch this and kind of decide if it's going to be good by Stuff Plus just by watching? And Ride is really hard to scout, but it is a little bit easier to scout Ride on a four seam if they also throw a two seam or a sinker. And so what you saw from Manoah was like there was this sort of two-plane fastball that was obviously a sinker, and then he would play off of that with something that looked like it kind of jumped off of that, So I was like, I think these fastballs are good. I think they're very good. And I think fastball scouting is one of the hardest things, actually, because Ride is just, you can't see it, I mean, it's something that you kind of maybe can see behind the plate better. Scouts can maybe see it well, but like from the behind the pitcher view, you're kind of watching the hitter's reactions and stuff. It's not as easy to see. But when he has with the two fastballs like that, I was really impressed. And I was like, this is going to look good by Stuff. Top 10 fastball. You have to kind of push the thing down to 30 pitch minimum, but top 10 fastball among starters, four seam by Stuff Plus. And I don't even know if that was like his third best pitch. Let me see here. I'm pulling it up right now. Alek Manoah, first best pitch is the slider, 140 Stuff Plus, four seam, 126 Stuff Plus, changeup, 105 Stuff Plus, and the sinker, which this model does not love sinkers. 100 is supposed to be average, but fastballs like a four seams, the average is more like 95, and for sinkers, the average is more like 90. So he has a 92.7 on his sinker. I would say it's average or better, which is kind of amazing because watching it, you're like, that's an awesome two-seamer. But, the league doesn't love two-seamers. The league is going away from them. And I think they often look better than they are. So anyway, long story short, I didn't see anything any problems. The only question I have is just how the Jays are going to handle him. And I think they need him to kind of just be a guy.
Yeah, and I think the immediate question I have, hearing the Stuff Plus numbers, Manoah versus Shane McClanahan. I think McClanahan was the other rookie pitcher who's come up and really popped with the entire arsenal. How do you compare them the rest of the way? I know McClanahan was, inside your top 30 among starting pitchers last week when you updated your pitching rankings. So that has to be sort of a ballpark expectation for Manoah if we assume equal workloads. And I think Manoah's workload might be a little heavier, relatively speaking, because the Jays don't have the same bullpen depth luxury that the Rays have. So McClanahan can easily be pulled after 5 because the Rays could turn it over to 4 relievers. The Jays kind of need Manoah to go that 6th inning whenever possible just to make it a little bit less stressful on their pen.
Might be interesting to see what that does to home run rate, because amazingly, Manoah is basically projected to do the same thing that he just did, strikeout rate and walk rate. It's just the difference is they're giving him more strikeouts and more home runs going forward. If he's forced to pitch in the sixth, he might give up some home runs there. But that volume is offset by the fact that McClanahan's stuff is just a slightly bit better at every stop. Curveball 140, slider 130, four seam 116. Manoah has the fastball on him. Changeup 92. Okay, I would say Manoah actually profiles better, and McClanahan has actually had a little bit of a dip in stuff. Plus, as his slider has become more of a hard slider, hard cutter type thing. But the slider bounced back in the last start. And so I'm hoping that was just a little temporary blip. There is some risk with the young pitchers, and maybe I shouldn't have pushed McClanahan that hard, but I'd put Manoah in the top 40. Yeah. I put McClanahan in the top 40.
I think that's a reasonable place to go high end for guys that appear to have legit great stuff.
And for the guy who complained about what is he going to show in the chat again? Be like, why did everybody talk about Shane McClanahan? Now he's the best. We did talk about Alek Manoah. I think we did in reference to the Shane McClanahan thing.
Do we have to come up with another one now? Like, who's the next one?
Oh, who's the next one? I don't know. You're going to run out at some point. I mean,
yeah.
Patino coming back?
I kind of want to know what Nick Lodolo's stuff actually looks like, because his numbers have been dominant. He's at AA instead of AAA.
It's some weird bad start where he walked 5 people, but other than that.
How helpful would it be for you in keeper and dynasty leagues if you had stuff plus numbers on prospects? How amazing would that be?
God, we do have that hack for those minor leagues of parks, so I kind of want to do it for those. I don't want to ask too much of Max. Max Bay has done a great job with the stuff plus stuff that he's done so far, and we are kind of stuck with like that, which would be incomplete, because it'd only be the pitchers that pitch in those parks.
Yeah.
Versus a kind of really a fun project where we want to look into sort of the predictiveness of stuff plus on like a start by start level, because there's that famous Rob Arthur piece where he showed the value of small changes in fastball velocity when it comes to, start to start changes, and that being predictive for the next start. If that's true, then maybe Stuff Plus can be predictive in that way. In which case, we'd really have something on our hands here.
You got a couple really interesting paths to go down, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do. And yeah, shout out to Max, because that tool is a lot of fun to use. I'm glad that you've shared that with me.
We'll
play around with that a little bit behind the scenes.
We'll get it out to our listeners. I think it's just a question of what the format will be, where it'll be, how much cleaning up we want to do. But you've seen the cards. I'll continue to share the cards on Twitter, and if you ask me for a card, I can always share a card with you on Twitter.
Yeah, so a very close comp right now, just in terms of what we're seeing for Manoah and McClanahan as we set expectations for the rest of the season.
Just like the only question is innings, but I've always said, and has treated me fairly well this year in pitching, is just bet on talent, man. I think teams, for the most part, just want their best pitchers to pitch, and they'll find ways to do it. And I know that they're managing innings and this and that, but for the most part, for all the hand wringing about Shane McClanahan's, not throwing deep into games, he has 2 wins in his last 3 starts, and he's in the 3 straight 5-inning starts. I know that's not 6 or 7, but crap, that's dinosaurs. You're not going to get that anymore, man.
No, you got to make decisions pretty quickly in today's game, and that's what makes it both fun but also very challenging. So I want to get to what's probably the play of the year, just in terms of pure wildness. So if you haven't seen it by now, I will describe it. Javier Baez, with 2 outs against the Pirates, hit a ground ball to third base. Routine ground ball. Of course, the ball was fielded cleanly, thrown to first base, little off the bag, and Will Craig, not that Will Craig,
his
Will Craig.
Brain melted into a puddle.
I could totally understand how it happened. He got pulled off the bag toward Baez coming down the baseline. Baez saw him and turned around and started to go back towards home plate, which if you're playing in the moment, if you're Will Craig, you're like, what's happening?
I guess I'll tag out.
What's happening
He
here?
can't go any further than home.
Right. He can't go back. He's going to run on the baseline. He's going to be out.
Yeah.
Again, there are 2 outs. This is forgotten because what's happening in front of you
surprises
over
in his head. He thinks it's all over.
It's like, oh, we're good, no problem.
I'll just go walk and touch them, and then walk over to the dugout.
Yeah. So there's a runner on second base when this sequence begins. Wilson Contreras, and Contreras goes from second to third while this begins.
He decides to keep running. There's 2 outs.
Continues running while Baez has Will Craig kind of stumbling down the first baseline, trying to tag him. Contreras scores because Craig doesn't realize Contreras is going to score, flips the ball home too late, just barely.
Never should have let go of that ball, man.
Never should have let go of that ball.
You could have walked. You could have stepped in the plate, and it would have all been over.
So the amazing thing here, Baez is so close to home plate. He's in an umpire-like position on the first base side of home plate. He signals safe, which is my favorite thing about this entire sequence, like he's the umpire, and then takes off.
He should have been running towards first. He should have been running. He shouldn't have done the because he had to be safe, because if he wasn't safe at first, the run wouldn't have counted.
Right. After all of that, he could have been out.
He could have still been out.
Which would have been even more ridiculous than what happened. So because the first baseman was near home plate where all this was going down,
and
nobody
the second
was at first base.
Like he's still got him. Like everyone's like, he's still got him. The second baseman's not really paying attention.
Yeah, they're all just like, this play's done.
I'll have to cover first.
Baez takes off after the run scores.
Second baseman runs to first.
Mm-hmm.
Ball goes into the outfield.
Complete chaos. Baez ends up on second base after all this, which is just, I loved it because
Anthony
it was such
Rizzo
a heads up
is laughing so hard.
It's amazing. Like I love it because it's something that very few players would even think to do in that situation. Most players would just say, I ground it out. Innings over, whatever. But Baez just did something different. And when you do something different, sometimes amazing things happen. He turned it into a snowball fight. And it's a play that we're going to watch highlights of and laugh at probably for the next 50 years.
There's also something that's really interesting about the best plays of all time, or the most interesting plays of all time, and this play is there's a tinge of sadness to it. You know, I feel bad for Will Craig. Like he messed it up badly. Like there was like, he's the butt of jokes. Like, you know, there are people being like, oh, what if Will Craig knew how to play first base? And like, it's just, and like when you're watching it, you see like befuddlement, you know, and you're just like, oh man, the gears are grinding on this one. It's just, there's a little bit of sadness. So it's got surprise and joy and ridiculousness and a little tinge of sadness when you consider the plight of young Mr. Craig.
Hopefully, for the sake of Will Craig, he can do some other things in the field that he will be remembered for instead, because
hit some homers, dude.
It's going to be a while before people forget that he was the guy that got deked by El Mago on that play. One other awesome thing that came in, I'm going to call this ad optimization. If you're watching on YouTube, this will carry a little more weight. One of our listeners, Bart, sent us a screenshot and an email, and he said he was looking at Spider Tack online recently, trying to buy Spider Tack on Amazon, but he plays in his fantasy baseball league over on Yahoo. So he's on his phone, and he pops up in Trevor Bauer's player card, and it fires in the Spider Tack ad from Amazon. I mean, under Bauer's face. It is right under his headshot.
Yeah.
It is just ridiculous. It's like the most perfect screenshot. Like, I mean,
it's also my favorite thing. Like when you go to the Spider Tack thing, it's like it's great for cinder block loading. You know, contractors love it. And then like there's like 3 comments that are like, it's great for pitching. We know what this is really used for. I
think I just love it even more because Bauer's got a smile in his headshot, so it's just a perfect accidental endorsement of the product from.
Oh man, I was on the radio in St. Louis constantly yesterday because of the Giovanni Gallegos incident where his hat was confiscated. And just to give y'all the sort of the snapshot of that, I think most of y'all would know these things from reading or listening, is just that sunscreen and rosin does not give you the same performance enhancing aspect that something like Spider Tack does. It's plus 30 RPM at most. And so what you see when you look at the video, you actually literally see Gallegos point to his forearm where he has sunscreen and point to the rosin when he talks to Joe West. And then Joe West says he just uses sunscreen and rosin, right? Which is really interesting because that is illegal technically by the book. You're creating a new substance that you're doctoring the ball with. However, it doesn't have the same performance enhancing aspect. And so we actually saw Joe West look the other way. We killed Joe West all the time for other things. And some people are killing him for being an show thing, but he did not kick Gallegos out of the game.
Right. Schilt got tossed.
Well, I mean, and I have sympathy for Schilt because he's saying he's doing sunscreen and rosin, people doing much worse, and everyone's doing this. Are we really doing this? And I don't know if maybe he thought Gallegos was going to get kicked out, and that's why he's so mad, or he's just mad that he felt like his player was getting targeted and had to stand up for him. But I thought West did an okay job to just be like, hey, just take this hat off. And I don't know if he thought it was super obvious, or if somebody asked him to, or if he wanted to do what baseball has said. What they want to do is research and find out how many people are doing sunscreen and rosin, how many people are doing the crazy stuff, and how much they want to do. And they definitely don't want to start this fight in the year where the CBA is being done. So I think right now this is all sort of fact-finding mission, and it's a little bit of an unfortunate comparison, but it's a little bit like the Mitchell report time in baseball, where they're just trying to figure out how many people are doing this, how big of a deal it is, and maybe once we have a new CBA, we can go to work on this aspect of baseball. But if they do something, it's possible that they cut strikeouts with this. So I think, overall, I know that was like a bad time maybe for some St. Louis fans, and they felt maybe attacked and stuff. But I thought actually people handled it fairly well, and Mike Schilt had a point. Joe West did not kick the guy out. He's just trying to kind of do what baseball's asked him to do, which is, confiscate hats, confiscate balls, track this and gain more information. So it also just points to how uneasy this is going to be, because at some point they are going to turn on the suspensions, right? Maybe that's what they say. So after they do the fact finding, they're going to turn on suspensions, and the first person is going to feel very targeted. You're going to feel like, oh, you just singled me out. But somebody has to get singled out in order to kind of scare the rest straight, because you're probably not going to catch every single person doing it. You're just trying to kind of broadcast the message that this crap isn't going to fly anymore.
Yeah, a lot there. First and foremost, I actually feel bad for Mike Schilt too. Mike Schilt was right. I feel bad for Gallegos too. I had some tweets about the subject. I really did not want to brand him as a traitor, a cheater. I think sunscreens and rosin is fine, and I've been consistent saying that I think everyone's doing something like that, and there's people doing much worse. So, yeah. So generally, I support Mike Schilt getting thrown out of games. In this case, he was right. I will admit it. Don't take that clip and use it out of context. Mike Schilt was right. I'm admitting it. I didn't know I didn't have the full story. When we were talking on Wednesday, it was just fresh. We didn't know the sequence of what happened.
I had some Cubs fans come onto some tweet threads and be like, "Oh, I just support anything that throws Mike Schilt out of the
game." See, yeah, like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, I guess, in some cases. So
suddenly, I like Joe West.
Little of that going on for me, I guess, in that circumstance. But
and that was the game I think that Joe West broke the record.
Yeah, it was the day after he was presented with something from the San Diego Chicken, right? What did the chicken do?
So what a day for Joe West.
Yeah, big 24 hours for Joe. I'm going to be gone next week. Monday, of course, is Memorial Day, so there's no show on Monday, and we will have shows Wednesday and Friday. We
can announce a guest host on Wednesday. We're going to go turn back time to the time when Paul Sporer and I used to broadcast on the Sleeper in the Bus. So Paul Sporer will come in. It'll be funny. Maybe I'll just hand him the reins and be like, "You're the host."
Hey, guest, lead host.
Yeah.
No, that's gonna be great. It's a nice throwback to have you guys working together next week. So I'm looking forward to listening to that. I'm sure a lot of people out there are too. Britt's on vacation. She's back the same week I come back. I'll be back on Monday, the 7th. She'll be back on that Friday. Yeah, and I think you're going somewhere that week too. So we're getting our R&R in right now. We'll be good up through the All-Star break and far into the second half, but it's good to get that rest in when you can.
Also, mix it up. You know, have some other voices on here. We don't normally do guests, so it'll be kind of a fun time.
Yeah, it's a good time to do that. If you don't already have a subscription to The Athletic, get one for $3.99 a month at theathletic.com/ratesandbarrels. That includes rankings, articles, everything we do, including maybe some bonus podcast content in the future too. So keep that in mind. On Twitter, he is at Eno Saris. I am at Derek Van Riper. You can always email us, ratesandbarrels@theathletic.com. That is going to wrap things up for this episode of Rates and Barrels. Have a safe and happy holiday weekend, and Eno and Paul are with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.